Have you ever found yourself in a moment where time seems to stand still and the world around you shifts in a way that you can't quite comprehend? That moment arrived for me during what should have been a celebration of love, a union that had once seemed so perfect. Instead, it became the night that uncovered a web of deception I had never anticipated, a revelation that would awaken a strength within me that would alter the course of my life forever. Before we dive deeper into this story, think about this. Where are you tuning in from? And if this resonates with you, still be sure to subscribe, because tomorrow I have something truly special for you. My name is Olivia Carter, and until 6 months ago, I believed I had it all. I had built a successful interior design business from the ground up, transforming it from a one-woman operation in my spare bedroom to a respected firm with clients all across Portland and Seattle. My husband, Nathan, was a rising star in the corporate world, an attorney at one of the most prestigious law firms in the city. We lived in a beautiful craftsman-style home in the West Hills, with breathtaking views of Mount Hood on clear days. To the outside world, we seemed to embody the perfect balance: ambition and affection, work and play. At least that's what I thought until that fateful morning of our 7th wedding anniversary, when everything would change. The morning began with the kind of light only the Pacific Northwest could offer. Soft rain that gave way to hazy sunshine filtering through the tall pines surrounding our home. I woke up early, too excited to stay in bed. 7 years of marriage, 7 years of building a life together. It felt monumental, like we'd crossed an invisible threshold into a deeper commitment. But when I turned over in bed, Nathan was already gone. On his side of the bed, there was a note on the nightstand. Early meeting. See you tonight at Riverside. Love you. Riverside, our special place, the upscale restaurant where we had our first date when we were both just starting out. Back then, I carried a design portfolio under my arm, and he was weighed down by law school debt and lofty ambitions. Nathan had insisted on booking Riverside for our anniversary dinner, despite its month-long waiting list. "I know someone," he had said, with that confident smile that first drew me to him. As I spent the day in a pleasant buzz of anticipation, wrapping up client calls early, I reflected on all the steps we had taken together. We had come a long way, from our first apartment with leaky faucets and unreliable heat to the late nights we spent planning for our future. We had even started talking about starting a family soon. At T4, I felt ready, and Nathan had agreed that his career was finally stable enough. When I arrived at Riverside, the hostess showed me to our table by the windows, overlooking the Willamette River. The restaurant hummed with quiet conversations, candlelight reflecting off pristine tablecloths, and the soft clink of polished silverware. I ordered a glass of champagne while I waited, watching the sunset as it painted the sky in hues of pink and orange. But when 7:15 p.m. came and went, 15 minutes past our reservation time, I felt a tightness in my chest. Nathan walked in, looking handsome as ever, in a charcoal suit, his dark hair slightly damp from a passing rain shower. But something in his expression made my stomach tighten. There was a look in his eyes, one that didn't match the occasion. And then I saw her. A woman walked beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm, in a gesture of familiarity that sent a cold shiver down my spine. She was striking, tall, willowy, with sleek blonde hair, wearing a black dress that seemed to contour every curve of her body. I recognized her immediately. Megan Walsh, Nathan's executive assistant, hired just under a year ago. I stood up as they approached, my anticipation giving way to confusion. "Nathan, I didn't realize we were having company tonight." His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Olivia, you look beautiful." He leaned in to kiss my cheek, a gesture that suddenly felt hollow. "Megan wanted to join us. I hope that's okay." Before I could respond, Megan extended her hand, her glossy red nails gleaming under the soft lighting. "Happy anniversary, Olivia. Thank you for letting me crash your special night." I shook her hand automatically, noting how firm her grip was, while her smile remained soft, disarming. Everything about this situation felt off, but I found myself leaning on the social graces my mother had instilled in me since childhood. Of course. Please, sit down. Nathan ordered a bottle of champagne without consulting me, and as the waiter departed, an uncomfortable silence settled over the table. I glanced between them, waiting for an explanation, but it never came. So I finally spoke up. "Oh, is there a reason we're celebrating our anniversary with your assistant, Nathan?" He exchanged a look with Megan, one that passed between them, silently excluding me from their shared understanding. My champagne glass froze halfway to my lips as I observed the communication that didn't involve me. "Actually, Liv, there is," Nathan said, using the nickname he knew I preferred, only in private. "We have some news to share with you." Megan reached across the table and placed her hand gently over Nathan's, an action so intimate it felt like I was an intruder, witnessing something that was never meant for my eyes. Her voice was soft, almost too soft, as she spoke. "We thought it would be better to tell you in person, in a public place." It was as though she were delivering bad news to a child, her tone laden with an emotion I could not place, yet felt deeply unsettling. I set my glass down carefully, my hands suddenly trembling with a fear I couldn't explain. "Tell me," I whispered, barely able to steady my breath. Nathan took a deep breath, his gaze finally meeting mine. "Megan and we've been seeing each other for about 6 months now." The words hung between us, heavy in the air, their simplicity magnifying their devastation. 6 months, half a year of lies, of coming home late from supposed client meetings, of weekend work emergencies that had always seemed plausible. Half a year spent planning our future, while Nathan had been building one with someone else. I could feel the cold rush of reality settle over me, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears as I responded, "I see." Megan leaned in slightly, as if bracing herself for what she was about to say. "There's more," she added, and for the first time, I noticed her other hand, cradling her stomach protectively. "I'm pregnant, 14 weeks. The world around me seemed to fade. The sounds, the conversations, the soft clink of silverware became muffled, distant, as though I were submerged underwater. Pregnant. Nathan and his assistant were having a baby. The future I had imagined, the future we had planned, was crumbling before my eyes, falling apart faster than I could grasp it. "We're moving to Chicago," Nathan continued, his words stumbling over each other. "The firm's opening a new branch there, and they've offered me the position to head it up. We leave in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. They had their escape planned, their new life ready to begin." How long had they been orchestrating this? How many nights had Nathan spent beside me, pretending, while secretly planning his new life with her? The waiter returned, interrupting the moment, the pop of the champagne cork piercing the silence like a gunshot. He began to pour, unaware of the storm unfolding at our table. "No," I said, covering my glass with my hand, feeling the weight of the moment settle into my bones. "I won't be having any." The waiter hesitated, glancing between us, before Nathan, without even attempting to hide his intentions, told him to pour just 2 glasses. He was toasting to a new beginning, to a life with Megan, right in front of me. As the waiter retreated, Megan leaned forward, her expression one of rehearsed sympathy, as though she had memorized her lines for this very moment. "Olivia, I know this must be a shock," she said, her voice dripping with a false gentleness. "We didn't plan for this to happen. It just did. Sometimes love catches you by surprise." Love. She had the audacity to call it love. The affair that had been built on deception and betrayal. "How considerate of you both," I said, surprised by the steadiness of my voice. "To hijack my anniversary dinner with your announcement." I paused, looking at Nathan. "Was this your idea, Nathan? Or was it hers?" Nathan shifted uncomfortably, his eyes avoiding mine. "Liv, we thought it would be better this way. A clean break." "A clean break?" I interrupted, the bitterness rising in my throat. "You thought it would be better to humiliate me in public, to turn what should have been a celebration of our marriage into the announcement of its end." Megan's sympathetic expression faltered, the mask slipping for just a second. "That wasn't our intention," she said, her voice faltering. "What exactly was your intention, Megan?" I asked, my voice cold now, each word measured and deliberate. "To show me how easily I've been replaced? To make sure I understood that while I've been designing other people's dream homes, you've been destroying mine." Nathan reached across the table, his hand outstretched in an attempt to grasp mine, but I pulled back instinctively, as if his touch might burn me. "Olivia, please," he said, his voice strained. "This doesn't have to be ugly. We can handle this like adults." A bitter laugh escaped me, sharp and brittle. "Like adults?" I asked, the irony almost too much to bear. "Is it adult behavior to carry on an affair with your assistant while coming home to your wife every night? Is it adult behavior to get another woman pregnant while still married?" By now, the people around us had begun to notice, heads turning in our direction. Nathan lowered his voice, his face reddening. "Keep your voice down. You're making a scene." "I'm making a scene?" The words felt like a punch in the gut. "You brought your pregnant mistress to our anniversary dinner, and I'm the one making a scene?" Megan touched her throat nervously by glancing around. Perhaps this wasn't the best idea after all. "Maybe we should go." "No," I said firmly, the weight of what was happening pressing down on me. "You wanted this public announcement, so let's have it. Let's talk about what happens next." Nathan straightened up, his posture shifting into the controlled, calculated stance of a lawyer, one I knew all too well. Confident, slightly detached. "I've already spoken with my attorney. The house will need to be sold. Of course, we can split the proceeds. My firm has connections with excellent divorce lawyers who can make this smooth and quick." Of course, he'd already consulted an attorney. Of course, he had a plan. Nathan always had a plan. "And what about my business?" I asked. "Half of my client meetings happen in our home. Where am I supposed to go while you're off? Starting your new life in Chicago?" He had the audacity to look annoyed. "Olivia, be reasonable. You can rent a place, maybe downsize your business temporarily. You're talented. You'll bounce back." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Bounce back as if he were describing a minor setback, not the systematic dismantling of the life we'd built together. I took a deep breath, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "Nathan, do you remember what you said to me the week before our wedding? When my father insisted on the prenuptial agreement, the change in topic seemed to throw him. He frowned slightly. What does that have to do with anything you said? Don't worry about it, Liv. It's just a formality. We'll never need it." I reached for my purse, pulling out my phone. I've been thinking about that conversation a lot today. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. "The prenup is standard. It protects both of us, does it?" I scrolled through my phone, finding the document. I'd asked my lawyer to email me earlier that day. Just a precaution, a nagging feeling. I couldn't explain. Section 4(2) is particularly interesting. Should you like me to refresh your memory? Nathan's expression hardened. "This isn't the time or place." I disagree. This is exactly the time and place I looked directly at. "Megan, did he tell you about our prenuptial agreement?" "Megan? Did he mention the infidelity clause?" The raw color drained from her face. "What? Nathan's father insisted on it, actually old-fashioned values and all that. In the event of infidelity leading to divorce, the offending party forfeits their claim to joint assets and pays a penalty of $500,000. I smiled thinly. My father thought it was excessive, but Nathan's dad was quite adamant. Nathan's jaw clenched. "You wouldn't. What? Hold you to a legal document you willingly signed. Why not? You're holding me to this public humiliation." Megan looked at Nathan, confusion, and the first flickers of anger crossing her face. "You told me the divorce would be straightforward, that we'd have enough for the down payment on the Chicago house. He probably thought I wouldn't find out," I said, turning my phone to show her the document. Or maybe he forgot about this. Nathan's always been focused on the big picture, sometimes missing crucial details. "This is ridiculous," Nathan snapped, but I could see panic creeping into his eyes. "You can't prove anything." I reached into my purse again, pulling out a sealed envelope. and placing it on the table between us. Actually, I can. When you started coming home late, when you started taking calls in another room, when you changed the password on your phone, I got suspicious, so I hired someone. The envelope contained photographs, times, dates, hotel receipts, all gathered by the private investigator I'd hired 3 months ago, when I first began to suspect something was wrong. I hadn't wanted to look at them until now, clinging to the hope that I was being paranoid. You had me followed Nathan's voice. Rose in outrage. No, I had you investigated. I corrected. There's a difference. One is about jealousy. The other is about truth. And the truth, Nathan, is that you've left quite a paper trail. Megan pushed back from the table, her composure cracking. You told me your marriage was basically over, that it was just a matter of paperwork. That this, she gestured to her stomach, was the push you needed to finally leave. I felt a stab of pity for her. He told you what you wanted to hear, Megan. That's what Nathan does. The waiter approached. Again, sensing the tension, but professionally inquiring if we were ready to order. Nathan waved him away, impatiently. So what now? He demanded. Once we were alone again, you're going to try to take everything. Punish me. I looked at my husband, this man I'd loved and trusted for 7 years, and felt a strange mix of grief and liberation. No, Nathan, I'm going to enforce the agreement we both signed. The house is mine. The joint accounts are mine. Your precious car collection is mine, and you owe me $500,000. He laughed, though. There was no humor in it. You won't go through with this. It'll be messy public, your clients. My clients won't care that I stood up for myself against a cheating husband. I cut him off. If anything, it might bring in more business. Wronged women tend to stick together. Megan stood abruptly, grabbing her purse. I need some air. She looked at Nathan, her expression a mix of betrayal and fear. Fix this now. She strode toward the exit, leaving us alone. Nathan leaned across the table, his voice low and threatening. You'll regret this, Olivia. I made you before me. You were designing starter homes and apartment renovations. My connections built your business. The last piece of my heart that had held any affection for him shattered at his words. No, Nathan. I built my business with talent and hard work. You were just convenient marketing. I stood smoothing down my emerald dress, the dress I'd bought to celebrate 7 years of what I thought was love. Congratulations on your new family. I hope it was worth it. As I walked out of Riverside, leaving Nathan with the bill and the weight of his choices, I felt the cool evening air on my face, like a promise. The future I'd planned was gone, but another one entirely of my own, making stretched before me. My phone buzzed in my purse, a text from my best friend. Kate, how's the anniversary dinner going? I paused on the sidewalk, the city lights reflecting in earlier rain. How to explain what had just happened? How to put into words the collapse of one life and the beginning of another? I typed simply, "It's over, but I'm okay. Can I come over?" Her response was, "Immediate doors open, wines breathing. Whatever you need, whatever I needed." I wasn't sure what that was yet, but for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe fully. The secret I'd suspected but denied was finally in the open. The decision had been made for me. As I walked to my car, I realized Nathan had never asked if I'd known about the affair before tonight. He hadn't questioned how long I'd suspected, how many nights I'd lain awake, wondering how many times I'd checked his story, only to find inconsistencies he hadn't asked, because, as always, Nathan was focused on his needs, his future, his consequences. Well, now he had consequences in abundance. I slid into the driver's seat, catching my reflection in the rearview mirror. I expected to see devastation, but the woman looking back at me seemed different, stronger, clearer, unburdened by the weight of suspicion and pretense. 7 years of marriage had ended tonight, but something else had begun. Nathan, along with his pregnant secretary, was about to discover just how formidable I could be when I was no longer trying to save something. Already lost the drive to Kate's apartment, passed in a blur. Streetlights merged into streaks of gold. The radio played songs I couldn't hear, and my mind replayed those moments at Riverside on an endless loop. 14 weeks pregnant, moving to Chicago. The carefully orchestrated ambush on what should have been a night of celebration. I parked in front of Kate's, building a converted warehouse in the Pearl District that she'd helped me redesign 3 years ago. Back when Nathan and I were still solid, back when I believed in the life we were building. Kate was waiting at her door before I could knock, concern etched across her features. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a fierce hug. "What happened?" she asked. Guiding me inside her loft was warm and inviting. Exposed brick walls, oversized furniture in rich cognac leather, and the subtle scent of the sandalwood candles she always burned in the evening. It felt like a sanctuary. "Nathan's been having an affair with his assistant." I said, the words still strange on my tongue. "She's pregnant. They're moving to Chicago in 3 weeks. Kate's jaw dropped. "That absolute bastard. Tell me everything." I sank onto her sofa, kicked off my heels, and poured out the entire humiliating scene. The ambush. At our anniversary dinner, Megan's practiced sympathy, Nathan's clinical detachment, as he outlined how our life would be dismantled. And then I concluded. I told them about the prenup. A slow, fierce smile spread across Kate's face. The infidelity clause, the one his father insisted on. I nodded, accepting the glass of red wine. She offered $500,000 plus forfeiture of joint assets. "Holy shit, Liv." She sat beside me, tucking her legs underneath her. "What did Nathan do? You should have seen his face despite everything." I felt a flicker of grim satisfaction. He didn't think I'd ever enforce it. He thought I'd be too devastated, too accommodating, too much. The Olivia he's used to managing Kate studied me over the rim of her glass. "And are you devastated?" I considered the question, searching for the grief I should be feeling. "I'm angry, humiliated, but devastated." I shook my head slowly. "I think that part of me died months ago, when I first suspected something was wrong. I've been grieving our marriage in small pieces, for longer than I realized." Kate reached for my hand. "What now?" "Now," I said, taking a deep breath. "I call my lawyer first thing tomorrow. Stay here tonight," she offered immediately. "The guest room is made up. You shouldn't be alone at the house." The house, our house. The thought of returning to that space, with its carefully selected furnishings and memories in every room, made my stomach twist. "Thank you," I whispered. My phone buzzed again. "Nathan." I silenced it without reading his message. "He can stew in his own mess tonight," Kate said approvingly. "Tomorrow's soon enough to deal with the fallout." But the fallout arrived sooner than expected. At 11:37 p.m., the building's security intercom buzzed. Kate answered, then turned to me with raised eyebrows. "It's Nathan. He says he needs to talk to you." My heart hammered against my ribs. How did he even know I was here? He probably tried the house first. Kate reasoned, "Want me to send him away?" I stood smoothing down the borrowed pajamas Kate had lent me. "No. Let's get this over with." Nathan appeared at the door. Moments later, his earlier composure completely shattered. His tie was loosened, hair disheveled, eyes wild. He'd clearly been drinking. "Olivia," he said, stepping forward. Kate blocked his path, arms folded. "You can talk from right there," she said firmly. He glared at her. "This is between me and my wife. Your wife, who you publicly humiliated and betrayed." Kate's voice was ice. "The wife you were planning to abandon after dropping your bombshell. That wife." "Kate," I said quietly, "it's okay. Give us a minute." She hesitated, then nodded. "I'll be in the kitchen. Shout if you need me." She fixed Nathan with a warning. Look before retreating. Nathan dropped onto Kate's sofa without being invited, running his hands through his hair. "You have to rip up that prenup. No apology, no explanation, just a demand." "I don't have to do anything," I replied, remaining standing. "Where's Megan at her place?" He looked up, desperation replacing his earlier arrogance. "Liv, you don't understand. If you enforce that prenup, I'm ruined." The Chicago position, the new house, everything's leveraged on the assumption we'd sell our place. I can't come up with $500,000. That sounds like a problem you created for yourself. He stood abruptly pacing the limited space between the sofa and coffee table. This isn't you, Olivia. This vindictive person. We had 7 good years. Doesn't that count for something? It counted for everything to me, Nathan. That's why I didn't hire the investigator at the first sign. Something was wrong. That's why I kept believing your excuses about late meetings and weekend emergencies. That's why I planned a special anniversary dinner while you were planning your escape. He flinched at that. I never meant to hurt you. A harsh laugh escaped me. No, you just meant to replace me. There's a difference. I suppose Megan's pregnancy was an accident, he said, as if that excused everything. But now that it's happening, I have responsibilities. Surely you can understand that I understand responsibility very well. I also understand consequences. You made choices, Nathan. A series of them. Each time you took Megan to a hotel. Each time you lied to my face. Each time you made plans for your new life while pretending to be committed to our existing one. He moved closer, his expression shifting to something more calculated, the lawyer emerging. Again, if you go through with this, it gets ugly public. Your business don't threaten me. I cut him off. My business is built on my talent and reputation, not your connections. And unlike you, I have nothing to hide. His jaw tightened. Think about what this will do to Megan, to our baby. The manipulation was so transparent, it almost made me laugh. Interesting how they're your priority now when they weren't important enough for you to end our marriage. Honestly, before starting a new family, I was going to tell you when after the baby was born, after you'd moved to Chicago, I shook my head. You weren't going to tell me anything. You were going to ambush me at a public dinner and then jet off to your new life. He ran his hands through his hair. Again, a gesture I once found endearing, but now recognized as his tell when strategizing. What do you want, Olivia? What will it take to make this go away? Make this go away, I repeated slowly. You mean your actions, your choices, your child. Which part would you like to make disappear, Nathan? He made a frustrated sound. You know what I mean. The prenup, the penalty. I studied him, this man I'd loved, whose ambition I'd admired, whose dreams I'd supported. I want you to understand something. Nathan, this isn't about money. This is about respect. You didn't respect me enough to be honest. You didn't respect our marriage enough to end it properly. You didn't respect me enough to tell me yourself that you were having a baby with another woman. So this is punishment, he said bitterly. No, this is consequence. There's a difference. He stared at me for a long moment, something like realization dawning in his eyes. You've changed. Yes, I acknowledged I have. I'll fight you on this, he warned. I have resources, friends at the firm. I'll contest the prenup. I moved toward the door. A clear dismissal you can try, but we both know your father's lawyers drafted that agreement. It's airtight. His expression darkened. My father will never support you over me. We'll see, I said, though privately, I suspected he was right. Richard Walsh had always backed his son unconditionally. Either way, I suggest you start looking for a more affordable option in Chicago, and perhaps explain to Megan that her new life might not include that dream house. After all, Nathan stood slowly, his earlier desperation hardening into something colder. You'll regret this, Olivia. When the dust settles and you're alone in that big house with nothing but your moral victory, you'll wish you'd been reasonable. Reasonable, I echoed. Like you were reasonable when planning to abandon our marriage, like you were reasonable when getting another woman pregnant while married to me. I opened the door. Goodbye, Nathan. He paused at the threshold. This isn't over, actually. It is. Our marriage is over. Your access to my sympathy is over. The only thing not over is the legal process, which my lawyer will be initiating tomorrow. After he left, Kate emerged from the kitchen, 2 fresh glasses of wine in hand. I heard most of that. She admitted passing me a glass. You were magnificent. I accepted the wine, but found I was shaking. I don't feel magnificent. I feel terrified. He's not gonna let this go. Of course he's not, she agreed. Men like Nathan never do. but you're stronger than he realizes." Then either of you realized. Maybe I sank back onto the sofa, the adrenaline of the confrontation draining away. He's right about one thing. His father will never support me over him. Kate sat beside me. Richard Walsh may be a powerful man, but he's also obsessed with his public image. If this gets messy, if it becomes known that his son cheated on his wife with his secretary, the scandal reflects on the whole family. I hadn't considered that angle. You think he might pressure Nathan to settle quietly? I think it's worth remembering that you have more leverage than Nathan wants you to believe. She clinked her glass against mine. And I think that tomorrow we call in reinforcements. Those reinforcements arrived at 9:00 a.m. the next morning, in the form of Elaine Harmon, the most formidable divorce attorney in Portland. Kate had worked with her on a redesign of her offices last year and made the introduction over coffee at her kitchen island. Elaine was in her early 60s, impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, her silver hair cut in a precise bob. She listened without interruption as I detailed the events of the previous night and the existence of the prenuptial agreement. "Do you have a copy of the prenup?" she asked when I finished. I nodded, retrieving it from my email on my phone. It's dated, signed, and was executed by Richard Walsh's firm. She skimmed through it, her expression giving nothing away when she reached the infidelity clause. However, a small smile curved her lips. "This is remarkably specific." She noted 500,000 is an unusual penalty amount. Nathan's father insisted on it. I explained. He'd been through a messy divorce himself years ago, when his first wife cheated. Nathan said it was his father's way of ensuring history didn't repeat itself. Elaine's smile widened. Slightly ironic. "What are my chances of enforcing it?" I asked. She set my phone down carefully. "With the documentation you've gathered. Very good. Prenuptial agreements can sometimes be challenged, but this one was professionally drafted. You both had independent legal counsel review it, and the terms, while harsh, aren't unconscionable. Given your financial situations at the time of signing, relief flooded through me. So what's next? First, we file for divorce citing adultery as grounds. This puts the infidelity front and center, establishing the basis for enforcing the prenup's penalty clause. Simultaneously, we freeze all joint accounts and assets to prevent Nathan from moving or liquidating anything. I nodded, making mental notes. And the house, given that the prenup specifies joint assets go to the wronged party, the house would be yours. However, she added cautiously, these situations rarely proceed smoothly. Nathan will fight. He'll likely claim the prenup is unenforceable for some reason. Duress inadequate. Disclosure something. And given that his father's firm drafted it, he may have insights into potential weaknesses. So we should prepare for a battle. Kate said always. Elaine confirmed. Battles can be won before they're even fought, if the preparation is thorough enough. She opened her briefcase, extracting a legal pad. "I need to know everything about your finances, joint, and separate every account, every investment, every asset. I also need details about Nathan's compensation structure at the firm. Partners often have complex arrangements: base salary, profit sharing, bonuses. We need the complete picture for the next 2 hours." We dissected my financial life. Elaine was thorough, catching details I might have overlooked by the end. I had a clearer picture of my financial position than I'd had in years. One last thing Elaine said as she prepared to leave. "Have you spoken with Megan directly without Nathan present?" I shook my head. "No, just that horrible dinner. She considered this. She may be a valuable ally. She's been lied to as well. From what you've described, the thought of reaching out to the woman who'd been sleeping with my husband made my stomach turn. I don't think I can do that. Consider it." Elaine advised, "Sometimes the most unexpected alliances prove most effective." After Elaine left with a promise to file the initial paperwork that afternoon, Kate turned to me. "Are you ready to go home?" Home? The word felt different now. "I don't know if I'll ever be ready, but I need clothes, my laptop, client files. I'll come with you," she offered. We drove to the West Hills in silence as we approached the house. I spotted Nathan's car in the driveway. "He's here," I said, my pulse quickening. I thought he'd be at work. Kate's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Want to come back later?" I took a deep breath. "No, this is my house too, for now at least." Nathan opened the door before we'd reached it. His expression, a mixture of anger and weariness. He'd changed into casual clothes, jeans, and a gray Henley, and looked like he hadn't slept. "We need to talk," he said, ignoring Kate completely. "I'm just here to get some things," I replied, stepping past him into the foyer. The familiar scent of the house, the subtle lemon of the cleaning products, the faint cedar from the closets hit me with unexpected force. "Olivia, please, 5 minutes." Kate squeezed my arm. "I'll start gathering your stuff upstairs," she said, giving me a questioning look. I nodded, and she headed up the staircase, casting a warning glance at Nathan. As she passed, I moved into the living room, keeping the sectional sofa between us. "What is it, Nathan?" He looked around the room at the art we'd collected together, the built-ins he'd installed one summer, the view of the mountains through the window, and for the first time, I saw genuine regret cross his face. I talked to my father this morning, he said. Of course he had. Nathan always ran to Richard when in trouble, and I prompted. "He says the prenup is solid, that the penalty clause will be enforceable with the evidence you have." He swallowed hard. "He's disappointed in me, Disa." I waited, suspecting there was more. "He's withdrawing his support for the Chicago position. Says he won't have the family name associated with a scandal." Nathan's voice was bitter. 36 years of being the perfect son, and one mistake costs me everything. One mistake, as if months of deception could be condensed into a single error in judgment. "What do you want, Nathan?" I asked, suddenly tired. "I want to fix this," he said, moving closer, "to find a way forward that doesn't destroy everything I've worked for." "Everything you've worked for," I repeated. "What about everything I've worked for, our life together, the future we planned?" "You were willing to discard all of that." He had the grace to look ashamed. "I wasn't thinking clearly. Megan, she's young. She was exciting. Different, but now with the baby coming, with everything at stake, you still don't get it." I said softly, "This isn't something you can fix with the right argument or the right connections. You can't negotiate your way out of betrayal. What if we went to counseling?" He suggested, desperation creeping into his voice. "What if—" "Stop," I held up my hand. "There's a pregnant woman across town who believes you're building a life with her. Are you suggesting we pretend that isn't happening? That you aren't the father of her child?" He looked away. "I don't know. I just know I'm about to lose everything." "No, Nathan. You already lost everything. You just didn't realize its value until it was gone." The doorbell rang, interrupting whatever he was about to say. Next, I moved to answer it, Nathan trailing behind me. Megan stood on the doorstep, her face pale and drawn. She wore jeans and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, without the confidence and polish she'd displayed at dinner. She looked younger, more vulnerable. "I need to talk to you," she said to Nathan, then noticed me. "Both of you, actually." I hesitated, then stepped back to let her in. Kate appeared at the top of the stairs, a duffel bag in hand. She assessed the situation with a quick glance. "Everything okay?" She called down, "Fine," I assured her, though nothing felt fine about this bizarre gathering in what had once been my happy home. Megan perched on the edge of an armchair, her hands twisting in her lap. Nathan remained standing, anxiety radiating from him in waves. "I've been doing some thinking," Megan began, her voice steadier than her hands. "And after you left last night, Nathan, I did some research about the prenup, about what it means for us." Nathan moved toward her. "Megan, I was going to call you. I've been talking with my father, trying to find a solution." "There isn't one," she interrupted. "Not the kind you're looking for." She turned to me. "He lied to me too. Olivia, he told me you were separating already, that you'd agreed to a divorce months ago. He said you were just waiting for the right time to announce it." The depth of Nathan's deception shouldn't have surprised me anymore, but somehow it still did. "That was never true." I told her, "I know that now." She shot Nathan a cold look. "Just like I know the Chicago house is a fantasy." just like I know he told his parents we met at a charity event. Not that I was his secretary, just like I know he promised me a life he can't deliver. Nathan's face had gone pale. Megan, please. No, she cut him off. I'm done being lied. Tars, she stood smoothing her sweater over the slight curve of her stomach. I'm not contesting the prenup. In fact, I'll provide a statement confirming the timeline of our relationship if it helps. I stared at her stunned. Why would you do that? Said. Her chin lifted slightly. Because I deserve better than a man who builds his future on lies. Because this baby deserves better. She glanced at Nathan, and because he was never going to be on it with either of us. Nathan looked stricken. You can't be serious after everything we've planned. Plans based on fantasy. She shot back on a money you don't have on a life you can't provide. She turned back to me. I don't expect forgiveness or friendship, Olivia. But I think we've both been deceived by the same man, and I won't help him avoid the consequences any longer. A strange sense of solidarity flickered between us. Two women manipulated by the same charming liar. What will you do? I asked her. Move back to Seattle. My sister's there. Start over. She placed a protective hand over her stomach. Figure out what being a single mother looks like. Nathan stepped between us, his composure completely shattered. This is insane. Both of you are overreacting. We can work this out. Find a compromise. There's no compromise for betrayal. Nathan, Megan said quietly. You taught me that. She moved toward the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. I'll have my lawyer contact yours, she said to me. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not just for the affair, but for believing I was special enough to justify it. Neither of us deserved this. After she left, silence filled the foyer. Nathan stood frozen, a man watching his carefully constructed worlds collapse around him. She's right. I finally said, neither of us deserve this. He turned to me, and for a moment, I glimpsed the man I'd fallen in love with. Vulnerable, human, flawed. What happens now? Now you face the consequences of your choices. I said simply, just like the rest of us have to. Kate descended the stairs, my duffel bag slung over her shoulder, my laptop case in her hand. Ready? She asked softly. I nodded, taking one last look around the home we'd built together. It would never feel the same again, but perhaps that was necessary. Perhaps this ending, painful as it was, would lead to a beginning. I couldn't yet imagine. My lawyer will be in touch, I told Nathan as I followed Kate to the door. I suggest you find one of your own, one not associated with your father's firm. He made no move to stop us standing in the middle of the foyer, like a man adrift. As we pulled away from the house, I caught a glimpse of him through the window, head in his hands. Are you okay? Kate asked. As we turned onto the main road, I considered the question carefully. My marriage was over. My life was upended. The future I'd planned had evaporated. But alongside the grief and anger, I felt something unexpected. Possibility. No, I answered honestly, but I think I will be. The next few weeks unfolded in a blur of legal meetings, paperwork, and the strange process of dismantling a shared life. I moved into Kate's guest room, temporarily grateful for the sanctuary of her space, while I sorted through the wreckage of my marriage. Elaine proved to be everything Kate had promised: efficient, strategic, and utterly merciless when necessary. She filed the divorce papers, citing adultery as grounds, froze the joint accounts, and placed a temporary hold on the house to prevent Nathan from selling it out from under me. He's hired Gloria Thompson. Elaine informed me during our third meeting, a hint of admiration in her voice. Smart choice. Is that bad for us? I asked, flipping through the stack of financial disclosures I needed to sign. Not bad. Challenging. She tapped her pen against her notepad. Gloria's excellent, but she typically defends prenups rather than challenges them. Interesting that she's taken this case. What does that mean for our strategy? It means Nathan is likely going for a settlement rather than a court battle. Gloria excels at finding mutually beneficial compromises that keep her clients out of court. Elaine smiled slightly. She also charges $750 an hour. So unless Nathan has cash reserves we don't know about, he's feeling the financial pressure already. I signed the last document and slid the stack across the desk. Has Megan's lawyer been in touch? Yes, she's provided a written statement confirming the timeline of the affair. Very detailed, very damning. Elaine's expression was carefully neutral. She's not asking for anything in return. The thought of Megan still stirred complicated emotions, anger and betrayal. Yes, but also an odd sense of connection. We'd both been deceived by the same man. Both had our futures derailed by his selfishness. What about the Chicago position? Is Nathan still pursuing that? Elaine shuffled through her notes. From what I understand, the offer has been rescinded. Richard Walsh made some calls. Nathan remains at the Portland office, but there's talk he's been removed from some key accounts. The news should have brought satisfaction, but instead I felt a hollow ache. Nathan's career had been so important to him, to both of us for so long. We'd made sacrifices for it, planned our lives around it. You don't look pleased, Elaine observed. I'm not celebrating his downfall, I said quietly. I just want what's fair. She studied me for a moment. Fair is subjective in divorce. Olivia, what the law provides is equitable division, consideration of fault in certain circumstances, and enforcement of valid agreements. Fair is something else entirely. I sighed, gathering my purse. So what's next? We have a preliminary hearing next week. Just procedural matters, but you should be there until then. Continue documenting everything. Any contact from Nathan, any unusual financial activity you notice. And please, she added with uncharacteristic gentleness, take care of yourself. Divorce is a marathon, not a sprint. Outside Elaine's office, spring sunshine bathed the downtown streets in golden light. Cherry blossoms lined the park, blocks their delicate pink petals drifting on the breeze. It seemed almost offensive that the world could be so beautiful. While my life was in shambles, my phone buzzed with a notification. An email from my largest client. They were postponing our project indefinitely due to internal restructuring. The timing was suspicious. Nathan had connections with their CFO. They played golf together monthly. I typed a careful response, professional and understanding. Then called Kate. He's poisoning my client relationships. I told her, fighting to keep my voice steady. The Westbrook project just got shelved. Kate's outrage was immediate and profane. That absolute snake. Can Elaine do something? Probably not. It's not illegal to tell people not to work with your soon-to-be ex-wife. Just incredibly petty. I leaned against a building, suddenly exhausted. I need to get back to work properly. I can't keep operating out of your guest room indefinitely. What about the house? Kate asked. Elaine said, it's yours under the prenup. The thought of returning to the house filled me with dread. I don't think I can live there anymore. Too many memories, so sell it. Use the money to buy something new, something that's just yours. The pragmatism in her voice steadied me, and in the meantime, come to the office. You can use the conference room until you figure something out. Kate's design firm occupied a sunlit space in a converted warehouse. It would be a temporary solution, but a solution nonetheless. Thank you, I said, meaning it for more than just the office, space for everything, the sanctuary, the friendship, the unwavering support. That's what friends are for. She replied simply, now, what are you doing for dinner? I'm thinking Thai food and plotting Nathan's social demise. You in despite everything, I laughed. Absolutely. The preliminary hearing was held in a small courtroom, with scuffed wooden benches and fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly ill. Nathan sat on the opposite side with Gloria Thompson, an elegant black woman in her 50s whose reputation for calm ferocity was well earned in Portland legal circles. Nathan looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, his normally immaculate suit slightly rumpled. He tried to catch my eye several times, but I kept my gaze fixed on either Elaine or the judge. The proceedings were brief and largely administrative, establishing timelines, confirming financial disclosures had been filed, setting dates for future hearings, if necessary. When the judge mentioned the prenuptial agreement, Gloria requested a sidebar. The two attorneys and the judge conferred quietly, while Nathan and I sat in uncomfortable silence. When Elaine returned to her seat, she passed me a note. They want to discuss settlement options. Meeting tomorrow, 2:00 p.m. my office. I nodded, relief and apprehension mingling in my chest. A settlement would be faster, cleaner, but it would also mean compromise, potentially letting Nathan off the hook for the full penalty outlined in our prenup. As we filed out of the courtroom, Nathan finally managed to intercept me in the hallway. Elaine tensed beside me, but I gave her a slight nod. "I could handle this. You look good," he said, his voice low and uncertain. "What do you want, Nathan?" He glanced down the hallway where Gloria was speaking with a clerk. "I wanted to apologize for the Westbrook account. It wasn't me, Liv." I swear I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. Mark made that decision on his own when he heard about our situation. He continued, referring to the Westbrook CFO. "I told him it was inappropriate. I've asked him to reconsider." "Why would you do that?" He looked genuinely confused. "Because it's your work, your talent. My personal failings shouldn't affect that." For a moment, I glimpsed the man I'd married, the one who had always believed in my abilities, who had championed my career, even as he pursued his own. It was disorienting, like seeing a ghost. "Thank you," I said stiffly. "If that's true, it is." He hesitated, then added, "For what it's worth. I never meant for any of this to happen." The affair, the pregnancy, it all spiraled so quickly. Things don't just happen. "Nathan, you made choices repeatedly for months." He flinched. "I know. And I'm facing the consequences now. Every day." His voice dropped even lower. "Megan left for Seattle last week. She doesn't want me involved in the baby's life." The information landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples of confusion through me. "I thought you wanted a family with her." He looked away. "I thought I did too. Or maybe I just convinced myself of that when she told me she was pregnant. I don't know anymore." Gloria appeared at his side, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "We should go, Nathan. We have preparation to do for tomorrow." He nodded, then turned back to me. "Liv, don't call me that." I interrupted. "Not anymore." Something like resignation crossed his face. "Right. Sorry, Olivia. I just want you to know. I'm not fighting to keep what isn't mine." Tomorrow's meeting. I'm not trying to weasel out of the prenup. I just want to find a way forward that we can both live with. I didn't respond, watching as Gloria led him away. Elaine appeared beside me, eyebrows raised in question. "He says he didn't interfere with the Westbrook account." I told her, and that Megan's left town, doesn't want him involved with the baby. Elaine considered this the Westbrook situation we can verify. As for Megan, her lawyer did mention she was relocating immediately after providing her statement. It's consistent. "Why? Tell me though, what does he gain?" She shrugged. "Perhaps nothing. Not everything in divorce is strategic, Olivia. Sometimes it's just human beings processing grief and guilt in real time." The next day, I arrived at Elaine's office, 15 minutes early, stomach knotted with tension. Despite my outward composure, in court facing Nathan across a conference table, to dismantle our marriage felt overwhelming. 7 years together, reduced to assets and liabilities, divided like spoils of war. Elaine greeted me with a rare smile. "I've had some preliminary discussions with Gloria this morning. I think you'll be pleased with the direction things are heading." "What direction is that?" "Nathan is prepared to accept the infidelity penalty in full, no contest." I blinked, surprised. The entire $500,000, yes. His only request is for a payment plan rather than a lump sum. Given his current financial situation, that's reasonable. It was more than reasonable. It was unexpected. "What about the house? Our other assets?" He's conceding those as well. Per the prenup's terms, joint assets to the wronged party. She tilted her head, studying me. "Does this align with your goals for the settlement?" Did it? I had been prepared for a fight for Nathan to deploy every legal maneuver and emotional manipulation to reduce his obligations. This ready capitulation felt almost anticlimactic. "It seems too easy," I admitted. "What's the catch?" "That's what we're here to determine." She gathered her files. Gloria and Nathan should arrive any minute. Remember, you don't have to agree to anything today. We can take time to consider any proposal. The settlement meeting was surreal in its civility. Nathan and Gloria arrived precisely on time, exchanged professional greetings, and took their seats across the polished conference table. Nathan looked better than he had in court, more rested his suit, properly pressed his expression composed of solemn. Gloria presented their proposal efficiently. Nathan would accept the full infidelity penalty, paying in monthly installments over 5 years. All joint property would transfer to me, including the house investment accounts and art collection. In exchange, Nathan would keep his retirement accounts and personal possessions. The division was clean, straightforward, and heavily weighted in my favor, as the prenup dictated. There must be something else, I said when Gloria finished looking directly at Nathan. This is essentially giving me everything I asked for. Nathan met my gaze steadily. It's giving you what's legally yours under an agreement. I willingly signed. I broke the terms. These are the consequences. Elaine and I exchanged glances. We'll need to discuss this privately, she told Gloria. Once Nathan and Gloria had stepped out, Elaine turned to me. Thoughts? It feels wrong, I said, struggling to articulate the uneasiness, like he's playing some angle I can't see. Elaine reviewed the proposal again. The terms are sound. The payment plan is reasonable, given his cash flow situation. There are penalties for late payments. All very standard. She set the document down. What specifically concerns you? I sighed, frustrated with my own uncertainty. Nothing specific. Just Nathan doesn't give up ever. It's not in his nature. People change when faced with overwhelming evidence against them. Gloria likely advised him that fighting the prenup would be expensive and ultimately futile. This may simply be a pragmatic decision. My mind raced, searching for hidden traps or angles. I was missing, finding none. I nodded slowly. Let's accept the core terms, but request some additional safeguards around the payment plan. When Nathan and Gloria returned, we outlined our conditions. The payments would be secured against his partnership shares at the firm. Any late payment would trigger acceleration of the entire remaining balance, and a formal acknowledgement that the settlement was based on the infidelity clause of our prenuptial agreement. Gloria took notes, nodding. These terms seem reasonable. We'll draft the revised agreement for review by the end of the week. Nathan remained quiet, letting his attorney handle the negotiations. Only when we were wrapping up did he speak directly to me. There's one more thing, he said, his voice carefully controlled. Not a condition, just a request. I'd like to talk with you privately before we sign the final documents. Just once, outside the legal framework. Elaine's expression remained neutral, but I felt her posture tense beside me. That's entirely up to my client, she said. All eyes turned to me. The request seemed harmless enough, yet something in Nathan's tone suggested it mattered to him deeply. Why, I asked simply. Because there are things I need to say that have no place in legal documents. His eyes held mine unexpectedly. Vulnerable things I owe you as a human being, rather than as a soon-to-be ex-husband. I considered refusing, drawing a hard line between the past and future. But curiosity won out, or perhaps some lingering need for closure. One conversation. I agreed. After the settlement documents are drafted, but before signing, relief crossed his face. Thank you. As we gathered our things to leave, Gloria pulled Elaine aside for a private word. Nathan hesitated, then approached me. The house on Elm Street, he said quietly. The Victorian you always loved when we drove through Irvington. It's on the market. I stared at him, startled by the non sequitur. What I thought you should know since you're considering selling our place. He shrugged almost apologetically. You always said it was your dream house. If you're starting over, it might be worth looking at. Before I could respond, he turned and followed Gloria out of the conference room, leaving me puzzled by the gesture. Was it manipulation, a peace offering, or simply Nathan, who, despite everything, still knew what would matter to me? The Victorian on Elm Street had been a running joke in our marriage. Whenever we drove through the historic Irvington neighborhood, I'd slow down to admire the Queen Anne-style home, with its wraparound porch and intricate gingerbread trim. When we make it big, I'd say that's where we'll live. Nathan would laugh and squeeze my hand. Consider it done. Now, standing on the sidewalk in front of that very house, 2 days after the settlement meeting, I felt oddly untethered. The realtor beside me checked her watch, waiting for my reaction. "It needs work," she said, filling the silence. "The kitchen's original, most of the bathrooms too, but the bones are solid, and the Historical Society approved plans for modernization while preserving the character." I nodded, taking in the soaring ceilings, the ornate woodwork, the diamond-paned windows, catching afternoon light. It was exactly as beautiful as I'd imagined, and entirely attainable, with the proceeds from selling our current house. "The asking price is firm," the realtor continued, "but they're motivated sellers relocated to California for work." "I'd like to think about it," I said, running my hand along the carved banister of the main staircase. "Can I let you know tomorrow?" "Of course." She handed me a folder of information. "All the details are in here, including the inspection report and approved renovation plans." As we stepped back outside, she hesitated. "I should mention, there's another interested party. They're getting their financing in order, but will likely make an offer by the end of the week. Of course, there was a house like this wouldn't sit empty for long." "I understand. Thank you for the heads up." Back at Kate's apartment, I spread the listing materials across her coffee table. She whistled as she flipped through the photos. "It's gorgeous. Exactly your style." She looked up, eyes narrowing slightly. "How did you find out it was listed?" I hesitated, then admitted. "Nathan told me." Her eyebrows shot up. "Nathan? Why would he do that?" "I don't know. Maybe trying to soften his image before our final meeting. Maybe genuine goodwill." I sighed, leaning back against the couch. "It's so strange, Kate. Every time I think I figured him out, he does something unexpected." She studied me carefully. "Are you still in love with him?" The question caught me off guard. "No," I said automatically, then paused, considering more deeply. "No, but 7 years doesn't just vanish. There are moments when I glimpse the man married and it's disorienting. Like running into an old friend. You've lost touch with Kate." Set down the listing photos. "Just be careful with that meeting he requested. Men like Nathan, charming, strategic, they know how to press emotional buttons, especially ones they installed themselves." "I know. Trust me, my guard is up." I gestured to the spread of papers. "But what about the house? Am I crazy to consider it?" She smiled, bumping my shoulder with hers. "You'd be crazy not to. It's your dream, home, Lev. And what better way to start fresh than in a place that's fully yours? No memories of Nathan, no compromises based on his preferences, just your vision, your space." Put that way, it was hard to argue. I picked up the inspection report, already mentally redesigning the outdated kitchen. I'd need to sell our current house first, so list it. The market's hot right now, especially in the West Hills. She gathered the papers into a neat stack. "This is exactly what you need. A project, a fresh start, something to pour your talent and energy into, while the legal stuff sorts itself out." She was right. After weeks of reacting to Nathan's betrayal, responding to legal requirements, rebuilding my business from Kate's conference room, the prospect of creating something new, something entirely mine, was intoxicating. The next morning, I called the realtor and made an offer on the Victorian contingent on selling my current home. Then I contacted a different realtor to list the West Hills house, requesting that all showings be scheduled when I could ensure Nathan wouldn't be present. "How soon can we list?" I asked, eager. "Now that the decision was made, we can have professional photos taken tomorrow. Have it on the market by the weekend." The listing agent assured me, given the location and current inventory, I don't anticipate it sitting long. A weight lifted from my shoulders, movement, progress. After weeks of emotional limbo, I was finally taking concrete steps toward my new future. Elaine called that afternoon to inform me that the settlement documents were ready for review. Nathan's attorney has reviewed them and approved the language. All that remains is for both parties to sign. Nathan still wants that private conversation beforehand. I asked, yes. He suggested meeting at the house this weekend. Says there are some personal items deals he'd like to collect at the same time. Entirely up to you if that works. I thought about the pending house listing. The offer I'd just made on the Victorian actually this weekend. Works well. I'm preparing to sell the house, so he should take whatever personal items he wants before showings begin. Very practical, Elaine noted with approval. I'll arrange it for Saturday afternoon if that suits. And Olivia, remember, you're under no obligation to agree to anything outside the written settlement. This conversation is a courtesy, nothing more, I understand. I assured her. It's just closure. As I hung up, I wondered if closure was ever truly so simple, especially with someone like Nathan, a man who had been the center of my world for 7 years, who knew me better than anyone except perhaps Kate, who had loved me once before. Betrayal rewrote our story. Saturday arrived with unexpected nervousness fluttering in my stomach. I'd spent the morning with the photographer, making sure the house looked its best for listing photos. Every surface gleamed fresh flowers, brightened the entryway. Pillows were perfectly arranged on the sofa. It looked like a showroom version of the home we'd shared. Beautiful, but impersonal. Ready for new owners to project their own stories onto its walls. Nathan arrived precisely at 2, pulling into the driveway in his silver Audi. I watched from the living room window as he sat in the car for a long moment, seemingly gathering himself before approaching the door. When he knocked, a strange formality for a house he'd lived in until recently, I took a deep breath and opened it. Hi. He said simply, hi. I echoed, stepping back to let him in. The realtor said you wanted to collect some things. He nodded, glancing around at the staged perfection of the foyer. You're really selling it then? Yes, it should be listed by Monday. He followed me into the kitchen where I'd set 2 mugs of coffee on the island. Some habits died hard, including the instinct to offer hospitality, even to the person who had shattered my trust. Thank you, he said, accepting the mug. You didn't have to do that. It's just coffee. Nathan. He smiled slightly. Not just the coffee. All of this agreeing to meet, letting me back in the house, handling everything with such grace. It's more than many would do in your position. I shrugged, uncomfortable with his gratitude. You said you wanted to talk, so talk. He set the mug down carefully, gathering his thoughts. First, I wanted to tell you that I accepted a position at the Seattle office. It's not a promotion, lateral move at best, but it's a fresh start. I leave next month. The news was unexpected. What about the Chicago plans? Completely off the table? After my father withdrew his support, and Portland, he grimaced. The partners, the affair, my reputation has taken a hit. I'm sorry, I said automatically, then frowned at my own response. Why was I expressing sympathy for consequences he'd brought upon himself? He noticed my confusion and shook his head. Don't be. It's fair. All of it. The prenup penalty, the career setback, Megan leaving. I earned every bit of it. He took a deep breath, which brings me to what I really wanted to say. You asked me once why this happened, and I gave you excuses that Megan was exciting, that it just happened, that I wasn't thinking clearly. But those weren't reasons, they were deflections. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms protectively. So what were the reasons? Fear? He said simply, fear of turning 40 next year, and wondering if this was all there was. Fear that the life we'd planned so carefully had become a checklist rather than a journey. Fear that I was becoming my father, successful but hollow, respected but unloved. You were loved, I said quietly. I loved you. I know that's what makes it so unforgivable. His voice roughened. I didn't cheat because you failed, Olivia. I cheated because I failed to appreciate what we had, to communicate when I felt restless, to honor the commitment I made to you. The raw honesty in his voice caught me off guard. This wasn't the defensive Nathan I'd seen at Riverside, or the calculating Nathan who'd tried to manipulate his way out of the prenup's consequences. This was someone new, or perhaps someone who had been there all along, buried beneath layers of ambition and self-deception. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because you deserve the truth. Because I've had weeks to reflect on how thoroughly I destroyed something precious." Because he hesitated, then continued more softly. "Because even though our marriage is over, I need you to know that what we had was real. My failure to honor it doesn't diminish what it was." A lump formed in my throat, unexpected emotion rising. "I don't know what to do with that, Nathan." "You don't have to do anything with it," he assured me. "I'm not asking for forgiveness or reconciliation. I just needed to say it for myself maybe, but mostly for you so you don't spend years wondering if any of it was genuine." We stood in silence for a moment, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the kitchen floor. The space felt different, somehow, no longer vibrating with fresh betrayal, but humming with a quieter sadness, the gentle ache of something once beautiful, now irretrievably lost. "I went to see the Victorian," I finally said, changing the subject. "Made an offer." Actually, his expression brightened. "That's wonderful. It's perfect for you. All those built-ins for your design books, that sunroom, that would make an incredible office space." The enthusiasm in his voice was so familiar, so reminiscent of the Nathan who had supported my dreams, that for a moment I could almost forget the few months. "Almost I should get my things," he said, seeming to sense the shift in my thoughts. "I won't take much, just some clothes, books, personal items. Everything else should stay for staging." I nodded. "Take whatever matters to you. The rest is just stuff." As he moved toward the stairs, he paused. "Olivia, for what it's worth, and I know it's worth very little right now, I am truly sorry, not just for getting caught, not just for the consequences, but for the hurt I caused you. You deserved better." I met his gaze, finding unexpected sincerity there. "Yes," I agreed. Quietly I did. And as he disappeared upstairs to collect the remnants of his life from our shared home, I realized something important, something that might just be the first real step toward healing. I was done being Nathan Walsh's wife, but I wasn't done being Olivia Carter. In fact, in some ways, I was just beginning. The West Hills house sold in 5 days. 3 days of showings, a brief bidding war, and an all-cash offer, well above asking price. The buyers wanted a quick closing, which suited me perfectly. With each passing day, the house felt less like home and more like a museum of a life that no longer existed. My offer on the Victorian had been accepted contingent on my house selling, so the timing couldn't have been better. The pieces were falling into place with an efficiency that almost felt suspicious after weeks of chaos. "Sometimes the universe aligns," Kate said when I expressed my disbelief over celebratory drinks at her apartment. "Consider it cosmic karma for enduring Nathan's betrayal with such dignity." I laughed, the sound lighter than it had been in months. "I'm not sure dignity is the right word for how I've handled any of this. Trust me," she insisted, refilling our glasses. "Many women would have burned his designer suits on the front lawn or leaked his text messages to the firm's partners. You've been a model of restraint." The settlement was signed the week after Nathan and I had our conversation. We met at Elaine's office with Gloria. The 4 of us gathered around the conference table, reviewing each page with careful attention. Nathan signed without hesitation, his signature, bold and familiar, on each designated line. When it was my turn, I felt a strange reluctance, my pen hovering above the page. This was what I wanted: a clean break, a fair division, the enforcement of the agreement we'd both entered willingly. Yet signing felt momentous, the formal end of 7 years together. "Take your time," Elaine said quietly. Nathan watched me, his expression unreadable. "Second thoughts?" "No," I replied, meeting his gaze. Just acknowledging the moment I signed each page, the scratch of pen on paper, unnaturally loud in the quiet room. When I reached the final page, I paused again, then signed with a flourish. It was done. Elaine collected the documents, a professional smile warming her face. "Congratulations to you both on reaching an amicable resolution. We'll file these with the court today." and the divorce should be finalized within 60 days, given the uncontested nature. Gloria shook my hand, her grip firm. Best wishes for your next chapter. Olivia, you've handled a difficult situation with remarkable grace. As we prepared to leave, Nathan approached me one last time. When do you close? On the Victorian next month, if all goes according to schedule. The question seemed innocuous, but I remained wary of hidden intentions. Why I'd like to offer my contact at Bramley's for the renovation. Bramley's was an exclusive architectural salvage warehouse that specialized in period-appropriate materials for historic homes. They're normally closed to the public, but Jim would help you find original fixtures, hardware, anything you need to restore the place properly. The gesture was thoughtful, exactly the sort of thing the old Nathan would have done. Thank you, I said carefully. That would be helpful. He nodded, producing a business card from his wallet. I've already mentioned. You just call when you are ready. I accepted the card, our fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. A month ago, even that slight contact would have been unbearable. Now it was just strange, like touching a photograph of someone you once knew. Good luck. In Seattle, I offered a shadow, crossed his face. Thank you and good luck with the Victorian. It's going to be amazing once you work your magic on it. We parted ways in the lobby. Nathan heading toward the parking garage, me toward the street where Kate waited in her car. I didn't look back, but I felt his eyes following me, watching the final moments of our shared story fade into separate futures. Well, Kate asked as I slid into the passenger seat. How does it feel to be almost officially divorced? I stared out the windshield, trying to identify the swirl of emotions beneath my ribs. Incomplete. I finally said, like reading the last page of a book, only to discover someone's torn out the epilogue. She squeezed my hand. You get to write your own epilogue. Now, starting with that gorgeous Victorian, the weeks that followed were a whirlwind of logistics. Closing on both houses, arranging movers, sorting through 7 years of accumulated possessions. I divided everything into neat categories: keep, donate, sell, discard. The process was both cathartic and exhausting. Each item weighted with memories that required evaluation before being assigned its fate. Nathan's contact at Bramley's proved invaluable. Jim, a bearded architectural enthusiast with encyclopedic knowledge of Victorian craftsmanship, gave me a private tour of the warehouse's treasures. I found period-appropriate doorknobs, light fixtures, even original clawfoot tubs that would bring authentic character to the renovations. Your husband has good taste, Jim commented, as we examined a set of stained glass panels that would be perfect for the entry hall. He always appreciates the genuine article. I didn't correct him about Nathan's status. Focusing instead on the glass jewel tones of ruby, emerald, and sapphire that would cast colored light across the foyer floor. These are perfect. I'll take them. Excellent choice. I'll have them delivered to the house next week. He made a note in his leather-bound ledger. Will Mr. Walsh be overseeing the installation? He mentioned you were both quite involved in the project. The question caught me off guard. No, he's relocated for work. I'll be managing the renovation myself. Jim nodded, seemingly unperturbed by this revelation. Well, you clearly share his eye for quality. These panels date back to 1892, removed from a mansion in Lake Oswego before demolition. They don't make glass like this anymore. As I drove home from the warehouse, Jim's assumption lingered in my thoughts. Nathan had apparently spoken about our renovation project, implying ongoing collaboration. Was it simple convenience, easier than explaining our pending divorce, or something more calculated? Another attempt to maintain connections to keep doors open, even as we formally close them. I pushed the thoughts aside as I pulled up to my temporary home. After moving out of Kate's guest room, I'd rented a small apartment near the Victorian, a month-to-month lease that would give me flexibility. During the renovation process, it was sparsely furnished with just the essentials I'd kept from the West Hills house. Most of my possessions still in storage, awaiting their proper place in the new home. The apartment felt transitory in a way that matched my emotional state. No longer married, but not yet divorced. No longer in my old life, but not fully established in my new one, like living in the hyphen between before and after. My phone rang as I was unlocking the door. "Elaine, Olivia," she greeted me, her voice unusually animated. "I've just received some interesting news that affects your case." I set down my purse, instantly alert. "What's happened?" "Nathan's father passed away yesterday. Heart attack. Apparently quite sudden." The news hit with unexpected force. Richard Walsh had been a formidable presence in our lives, demanding, critical, but also oddly protective of me once he'd decided I was worthy of his son. Despite his flaws, he'd been the closest thing to a father figure I'd had since my own dad's death in college. "That's terrible," I said sincerely. "How's Nathan taking it?" "I don't have those details," Gloria informed me, as a professional courtesy, "given that the estate may impact your settlement." Elaine's tone remained neutral, focused on the legal implications rather than the emotional ones. Richard Walsh was a wealthy man. Nathan stands to inherit considerably. The practical significance dawned on me. The payment plan for the penalty may no longer be necessary. Yes, I could hear papers shuffling on her end of the line. "We'll need to wait for the will to be probated, of course, but I wanted you to be aware of the development." After we hung up, I sat heavily on my IKEA couch, trying to process this new twist. Richard's death would change things for Nathan, financially certainly, but also personally. Despite their complicated relationship, Nathan had spent his life seeking his father's approval, measuring his own success against Richard's exacting standards. My finger hovered over Nathan's contact information, still saved in my phone. Despite everything, should I call, offer condolences? The question of appropriate boundaries in the liminal space between marriage and divorce had no clear answer. In the end, I sent a text. "Just heard about your father. I'm so sorry for your loss. Please let me know if there's anything I can do." Simple, sincere, with no expectations attached, an acknowledgement of shared history without presuming ongoing connection. His response came hours later. "Thank you. Funeral is Saturday in Lake Oswego, 2:00 p.m. at Grace Episcopal. Would mean a lot if you could come." The request sent me spiraling into uncertainty again. Attending my soon-to-be ex-husband's father's funeral seemed beyond the scope of post-divorce courtesy. Yet Richard had been part of my life for 7 years. Would it be colder to stay away? I called Kate, my reliable compass in these uncharted waters. "What does your gut tell you?" she asked after I explained the situation. "That I should go, not for Nathan, but for Richard, for myself, for closure on that relationship too." "Then you have your answer." Her voice was gentle, but firm. "Just be prepared. Funerals bring out all sorts of emotions, and Nathan might read more into your presence than you intend. I'll be clear about my boundaries. I promise this is about paying respects, not rekindling anything." Saturday arrived with appropriately somber skies, gray clouds hanging low over the city. I chose a conservative black dress, pearl earrings that had been a gift from Richard on my 30th birthday, and minimal makeup. The church parking lot was nearly full when I arrived. Richard's influence evident in the number of attendees filing into the sanctuary. I slipped into a pew near the back, hoping to maintain a respectful presence without drawing attention. But Nathan spotted me almost immediately, his gaze finding mine across the crowded church with unring precision. He nodded slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement and perhaps gratitude, before returning his attention to the family members surrounding him at the front. The service was traditional and mercifully brief. Richard had never been a man who appreciated excessive sentiment or lengthy eulogies. Nathan spoke eloquently about his father's legacy, his voice steady until he mentioned Richard's core belief in honoring commitments, even when they come at great personal cost. His eyes found mine again, the implication clear in his gaze. After the final hymn, guests moved to the adjacent hall for the reception. I debated slipping away, my obligation to pay respects technically fulfilled, but something held me back. Some need for completion. I couldn't quite articulate. I was examining a photo display of Richard's life when Nathan approached, 2 glasses of wine in hand. He offered one to me without comment. "Thank you for coming," he said. After a moment, it would have meant a lot to him. I accepted the wine, keeping a careful distance between us. He was important to me too. "Nathan, I'm sorry for your loss." He nodded, his eyes red, rimmed but dry. "He asked about you, even after everything. Wanted to know if you were okay." The information surprised me. I thought he'd be firmly on Team Nathan in the divorce. A sad smile crossed his face. He was more complicated than that. Said I was a fool for throwing away a woman of substance for, and I quote, "a temporary diversion." Nathan sipped his wine, grimacing slightly. He wasn't wrong. I shifted uncomfortably, unwilling to be drawn into post-mortem analysis of our marriage. "How's your mother holding up?" "As well as can be expected. They had their issues, but 50 years of marriage creates a powerful bond." He gestured toward where Eleanor Walsh sat surrounded by sympathetic friends. "She'd like to see you if you have a moment." I hesitated, then nodded. Of course, Eleanor looked smaller than I remembered, diminished by grief, or perhaps simply by the absence of Richard's dominating presence beside her. When she saw me approaching, she stood, arms outstretched. "Olivia, dear, thank you for coming." Her embrace was familiar, the subtle scent of Chanel. Number 5, the cool press of her cheek against mine. "Richard always had a soft spot for you, Said you had more backbone than the rest of us combined." The comment was so perfectly Richard, a compliment wrapped in an implicit criticism of his own family, that I couldn't help smiling. He was always honest, if nothing else. Too honest, sometimes. She patted the chair beside her. "Sit with me a moment. Nathan tells me you're renovating the old Prescott place on Elm Street. Ambitious project." We chatted about the Victorian Eleanor, offering insights about its history that could only come from someone who had lived in the neighborhood for decades. It was surreal, this cordial conversation with my soon-to-be ex-mother-in-law at my soon-to-be ex-father-in-law's funeral, yet also strangely comforting. A reminder that relationships didn't simply vanish, but evolved, transformed by circumstance. As the reception wound down, Nathan found me again. "Can I walk you to your car?" I nodded, gathering my purse and saying goodbye to Eleanor. We walked in silence through the church garden, spring flowers, pushing through the soil and defiance of the gloomy weather. "The will reading is tomorrow," Nathan said abruptly. "Dad's attorney said to expect surprises." Oh, I kept my tone neutral though. Elaine's words about the potential impact on our settlement echoed in my mind. Richard was never predictable, especially when it came to money. He shrugged, hands in his pockets, "Whatever it is. I wanted you to know the settlement stands, regardless of what I inherit." I stopped, turning to face him fully. "Nathan, you don't have to." "I know, I don't have to. I want to." His expression was earnest, almost urgent. "The prenup penalty isn't just about money, Olivia. It's about accountability, about consequences." Richard taught me that, if nothing else. We had reached my car. I unlocked it, trying to formulate an appropriate response to his unexpected declaration. "I appreciate that. But if circumstances change significantly, they won't. Not in terms of our agreement." He stepped back, maintaining a respectful distance. "Take care of yourself, Liv." The use of my nickname, the one he'd been careful to avoid since I'd objected, slipped out naturally, a small but telling regression to familiarity in the emotional context of the day. I let it pass without comment, sliding into the driver's seat. "You too, Nathan. And again, I'm sorry about your father." As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of him in my rear-view mirror, a solitary figure in a black suit, watching until I turned the corner and disappeared from view. The Victorian consumed my attention in the weeks that followed. After closing on the property, I threw myself into the renovation. With single-minded focus, it became my therapy, my distraction, my rebirth, transforming the neglected Grand Dam into a showcase for both historic preservation and modern living. I assembled a team of contractors who specialized in historic homes, established a workable budget from the proceeds of the West Hills house, and created a detailed renovation plan, room by room. The project was ambitious, especially for someone newly single and rebuilding a design business, but the challenge energized rather than daunted me. The divorce was finalized with little fanfare, just a notice from Elaine that the judge had signed the decree and it was officially recorded. 62 days after signing the settlement, I was legally Olivia Carter again, no longer connected to Nathan Walsh, except through memory and a payment plan scheduled to last 5 years or so. I thought 3 days after the divorce was finalized, a courier delivered a certified letter to my apartment. Inside was a cashier's check for $500,000, the full amount of the infidelity penalty, along with a brief note on Nathan's law firm stationery. Olivia, as promised, the settlement stands regardless of changed circumstances, enclosed his payment in full of the agreed penalty. I've also instructed my attorney to transfer the remaining joint investment accounts to you immediately, rather than waiting for the scheduled date. My father's will contained the surprises. His attorney predicted chief among them that he left a significant portion of his estate to establish a scholarship foundation rather than to family. However, he did leave me his share in the partnership and enough liquid assets to fulfill my obligations to you without the extended payment plan. Consider this the final chapter in our financial entanglement. I wish you every happiness in your new home and new life, Nathan. I stared at the check, emotions churning. The practical implications were significant. Immediate financial security. No need to worry about whether Nathan would honor the payment plan. Over 5 years, complete separation of our financial lives. It should have felt like a victory. Instead, it felt like the abrupt severing of the last remaining connection between us. The payment plan, ironically, would have required minimal contact for years, annual tax coordination, occasional verification of payments received. Now there would be nothing, complete dissolution. I set the check aside, unsure why this development, objectively positive, left me feeling hollow. Perhaps it was simply the finality of it, the undeniable evidence that 7 years of marriage could be reduced to a cashier's check and a polite note. Kate, when I told her that evening, was less conflicted. This is perfect, she declared, examining the check with appropriate reverence. Clean break, full payment, no games. Take the win live. I know. I poured another glass of wine, leaning against my apartment's tiny kitchen counter. It just feels final, she suggested. Impersonal, I corrected, like a business transaction. Kate set the check down carefully. Isn't that what divorce essentially is? The business of untangling two lives. She wasn't wrong yet. Something about Nathan's approach, the formal note, the prompt payment without discussion, felt at odds with the moment of vulnerability at his father's funeral. The shared grief, the apparent revelation about his inheritance. Maybe I'm overthinking it. I conceded. It's done. I'm divorced, financially secure, and renovating my dream home. I should be celebrating, not analyzing. Kate raised her glass to new beginnings then, and to Richard Walsh's apparently excellent estate planning. I laughed despite myself, clinking my glass against hers. To new beginnings. The following weekend, I was at the Victorian, overseeing the removal of layers of old wallpaper in what would become my office. When my phone rang, a Seattle area code, I didn't recognize Olivia Carter. I answered, balancing on a stepladder with scraper in hand. Olivia, it's Megan Walsh. I nearly dropped the phone, the scraper clattering to the floor. Megan, I know this is unexpected, she said, her voice tense but determined. But I'm in Portland for a medical appointment, and I think we should talk in person. Of all the calls I might have anticipated, this was among the least expected. I'm not sure what we have to discuss, I said carefully. The divorce is finalized. Nathan's moved to Seattle. It's over. It's about Richards, Will, she replied. And some things Nathan may not have told you. Things that affect you directly. A chill ran down my spine. What things? Not over the phone. Her tone softened slightly. please. Olivia, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important for both of us. I hesitated, weighing curiosity against self-preservation. When and where? Tomorrow there's a cafe on Hawthorne. Rosewood noon would work for me. Rosewood was a quiet spot, not too crowded on Sundays, public enough to be safe, private enough for a sensitive conversation. Fine, I'll be there. After hanging up, I sat on the dusty floor of my half-demolished office, mind racing. What could Richard's will possibly contain that would concern both Megan and me? And why would she come all the way from Seattle to tell me in person? I considered calling Nathan, demanding answers, but something held me back. If he had concealed information relevant to our settlement, I wanted to hear it from Megan first, unfiltered by his explanations or justifications. That night, sleep eluded me. I tossed and turned in my rental apartment's unfamiliar bed scenarios, playing through my mind like film clips. Was Richard's estate entangled with assets Nathan and I had shared? Had Nathan misrepresented his inheritance to accelerate our divorce? And what was Megan's stake in all this? By morning, exhaustion had dulled my anxiety to a low hum. I dressed carefully in jeans and a blouse that made me feel confident, yet casual, determined not to appear either intimidated or overly concerned about this unexpected meeting. Rosewood Cafe was half empty when I arrived. Sunday, brunches already departed. Weekday lunch crowd not yet arrived. I spotted Megan immediately seated at a corner table, her blonde hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her pregnancy was more visible, now the curve of her stomach prominent beneath a loose green sweater. She rose awkwardly as I approached, one hand supporting her lower back. "Thank you for coming," she said, extending her other hand formally. I shook it briefly, taking the seat across from her. "You said it was important." A waitress appeared, and we both ordered herbal tea for Megan, black coffee for me. When she departed, Megan leaned forward, her expression serious. "I've left Nathan," she said without preamble, "permanently this time." The statement hung between us, unexpected and oddly deflating. After all the scenarios I'd imagined, this seemed irrelevant. "I'm sorry," I said automatically, "but I'm not sure how that concerns me, or why you'd come to Portland to tell me in person." She twisted a napkin between her fingers. "Because Richard's will changes everything, and you deserve to know the truth before making any final decisions." Final decisions. The divorce is already final. Megan, there are no more decisions to make. That's what Nathan wants you to believe. Her voice hardened. But Richard's will tells a different story. The waitress returned with our drinks, the interruption allowing me to gather my thoughts when we were alone. Again, I fixed Megan with a direct stare. "Explain, clearly and completely." She took a sip of tea, seeming to organize her thoughts. "Richard Walsh didn't just leave Nathan his partnership shares. He left him controlling interest in Meridian Properties." The name rang a distant bell, something Nathan had mentioned in passing years ago. His real estate holdings, more than that. Meridian owns half the commercial buildings in downtown Portland, plus developments in Seattle, Tacoma, and Boise. "It's worth hundreds of millions." She set her cup down precisely. "And Nathan knew about the inheritance months ago, before your settlement negotiations even began." I shook my head, confused. "That doesn't make sense. The will was only read after Richard died." "The official reading, yes. Richard told Nathan about the inheritance last fall, when he was diagnosed with heart disease." Her gaze was steady, challenging. "Nathan knew he was about to become extremely wealthy. He knew the prenup penalty would be a drop in the bucket compared to his inheritance, and he deliberately concealed that information during your divorce." The implications crashed over me like a wave. If what Megan was saying was true, Nathan had negotiated our settlement in bad faith, presenting himself as financially stretched by the penalty, when he knew substantial wealth was imminent. "How do you know this?" I asked, voice tight, "because he told me when he was trying to convince me to keep quiet about the affair." Her laugh was bitter. "He said once his father died, we'd have more money than we could spend in a lifetime, that the prenup penalty was just temporary damage control." I sat back processing this revelation. So why are you telling me now? Why come all the way to Portland when a phone call would have sufficed? Her hand moved protectively to her stomach, a gesture I was beginning to recognize as habitual. Because I'm done with his manipulations. Because pregnant or not, I won't build a life with someone who treats people as pawns. And because she added, reaching into her purse and producing a thick envelope, you might want to reconsider the terms of your settlement. In light of this, she slid the envelope across the table. Inside were financial documents, Meridian Properties, valuation statements, excerpts from Richard's will, with relevant sections, highlighted bank statements, showing transfers of millions into newly established trusts, with Nathan as beneficiary. He settled with you quickly, didn't he? Megan asked, as I scanned the documents, agreed to the penalty without much fight, paid it in full. Right after the will was officially read, I nodded slowly, pieces clicking into place. The penalty that had seemed so significant, $500,000, was negligible compared to what Nathan had inherited. By settling quickly, by appearing to accept responsibility, he had protected the vast majority of his newfound wealth from potential claims. Why would he pay it all? I wondered aloud. If he knew about the inheritance, why not fight the prenup entirely? Because Richard made it a condition. Megan replied, the will specifies that Nathan receives his full inheritance only if he honors all prior commitments, including the prenuptial agreement with you. Understanding dawned. So it wasn't about accountability or consequences. It was about securing his inheritance. Exactly. She sipped her tea, studying me over the rim. There's more, though. Richard added a codicil to his will after learning about the affair. Look at page 17. I flipped to the indicated page, scanning the dense legal language, until a phrase jumped out, additional bequest to Olivia Carter Walsh, in the ECR amount of $5,000,000. In recognition of her loyalty and integrity, my head snapped up. This can't be real. It is. Richard admired you, especially how you handled the discovery of the affair. He told Nathan it showed character. She leaned forward. Nathan was supposed to inform you of this bequest. The fact that you're surprised tells me he didn't. The room seemed to tilt slightly, the implications dizzying. Why would he hide this from me? Control power. Same reasons. He hid his knowledge of the inheritance. Megan's expression softened. Or maybe shame, knowing his father valued you enough to leave you millions while essentially putting conditions on his own son's inheritance. I stared at the document, Richard's last message to me, written in legalese but clear in intent, vindication, validation, and acknowledgement that in his eyes I had behaved honorably while his son had not. What do you want from this, Megan? I asked finally. You didn't come here just to play messenger. She straightened, meeting my gaze directly. I want to move forward with my life, with my child's life, free from Nathan's manipulations. I want what I deserve, from a man who made promises to me too. Even if they weren't formalized in a prenup, her voice remained steady, and I thought you might want the same. The subtext was clear, an alliance of sorts. Two women with legitimate claims against the same man, armed with information he had tried to conceal. What are you suggesting? That we present a united front, that we both pursue what we're entitled to you through challenging the incomplete disclosure in your divorce? Me. Through establishing proper support for his child. She gestured to the documents. Together with this evidence, we're stronger than either of us alone. The proposal was tempting, not just for the potential financial benefit, but for the satisfaction of exposing Nathan's continued deceptions. Yet something held me back, some reluctance to re-enter the emotional battlefield. I'd so recently escaped. I need time to think, I said, gathering the documents carefully, and to consult my lawyer. Megan nodded, seemingly unsurprised Of course I'm staying at the River Place Hotel until Tuesday. Call me when you decide. As she rose to leave, she paused, one hand on the back of her chair. He'll never change. Olivia, the manipulation, the half-truths, the strategic omissions, it's who he is. I had to learn that the hard way. I thought you should have the chance to make decisions with all the facts, not just the ones he selects for you. After she departed, I remained at the table, staring into my cooling coffee. The document before me, Richard's bequest, Nathan's deception. The vastness of the inheritance he had concealed should have felt like a revelation. Instead, it felt like confirmation of something I'd suspected all along, that Nathan's apparent accountability had been yet another calculated move in a game I hadn't known. We were still playing. The question now was whether to restart the game with new knowledge or walk away from the board entirely. Elaine's affairs felt different this time, less like a battleground and more like a war room, with documents spread across the conference table as she methodically built a case. Richard's bequest to you is legitimate, she confirmed, setting aside the will excerpt. Yes, Nathan had a legal obligation to disclose it during our settlement negotiations. His failure to do so constitutes fraud by omission. My fingers traced the edge of the table, following the grain of the wood, so the settlement could be invalidated. Potentially, we could petition the court to set it aside based on incomplete financial disclosure. She removed her reading glasses, fixing me with a direct gaze. The question is, do you want to? It was the same question I'd been asking myself since meeting with Megan 2 days earlier. Did I want to reopen what I'd considered closed, return to the courtroom, the negotiations, the emotional minefield of confronting Nathan's deceptions yet again? What would it look like? Best case scenario, Elaine leaned back, considering we file a motion to vacate the divorce decree based on fraud. If successful, we renegotiate the entire settlement with full disclosure of Nathan's inheritance and Richard's bequest to you. Given the magnitude of the assets involved, you could potentially receive significantly more than the prenup penalty in worst case. The judge denies our motion. The original settlement stands, and you pursue Richard's bequest separately as a probate matter. She shrugged slightly. Either way, you are entitled to the $5 million. The question is whether you want to reopen the divorce to pursue more. I stood moving to the window that overlooked downtown Portland. Spring had fully arrived. Cherry blossoms dotting the park blocks with clouds of pink and white. The Victorian was waiting for me, its renovation barely begun. My business was slowly rebuilding new clients, referred by those who valued my work, regardless of Nathan's connections. What if there's a third option? I asked, turning back to face her, one that doesn't involve courts. Elaine raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. I want Richard's bequest. It was his wish, and it feels like vindication in a way, but I don't want to spend the next year fighting Nathan for more than we agreed to. I returned to my seat, suddenly clear about my path forward. Can we approach this as leverage rather than litigation? A slow smile spread across Elaine's face, not her professional client reassuring smile, but something more genuine. Now you're thinking like a negotiator rather than a litigant. What specifically do you have in mind? A meeting? Nathan, me, you, his attorney. We lay out what we know about his omissions. We make it clear that we could pursue this in court, creating public records, discovery, depositions about his deception. All very messy, very public. And in exchange for not doing that, he facilitates the immediate transfer of Richard's bequest to me, with no challenges or delays. He makes a substantial donation to a women's shelter I've been supporting, and he signs an agreement never to contact me again professionally or personally, unless it's through attorneys. Elaine considered this for a moment. The bequest and the non-contact agreement are straightforward. The donation is an unusual request, difficult to enforce. It's not about enforcement. It's about making something positive come from all this deception. I felt more certain with each word, and it's about him having to write a very large check to an organization that helps women rebuild their lives after being treated the way he treated me. She nodded slowly. Poetic justice. I can work with that. She made several notes before looking up again. What about Ms. Walsh's proposal for a united front? Her claims against Nathan for child support would be stronger with your cooperation. The question gave me pause. Megan had reached out from a place of desperation and pragmatism, offering an alliance born of shared grievances. There was a certain elegant symmetry to the idea. Two women joining forces against the man who had deceived them both. Yet something about it felt wrong. Too vengeful, too entangled. The thought of remaining connected to Nathan through an ongoing alliance with Megan seemed like moving backward rather than forward. I'll provide any factual information her attorney requests, I decided, but I don't want our claims linked. Her situation is different from mine. She's having his child. She has a future that will always include him in some capacity. I want a clean break. Elaine nodded, making additional notes. I'll contact Gloria Thompson tomorrow to arrange the meeting. Given what we know, I expect Nathan will be motivated to resolve this quickly and quietly. As I gathered my things to leave, Elaine paused, her expression softening slightly. For what it's worth, Olivia, I think you're making the right choice. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't getting everything you could, regaining the freedom to move on. The meeting was set for the following Monday, formal enough to signal seriousness, soon enough to prevent strategic delays. We gathered in a neutral location, a conference room at the Heathman Hotel, with its old-world elegance and discreet staff. I arrived 15 minutes early, Elaine beside me. Documents organized in a leather portfolio. Gloria Thompson appeared precisely at the scheduled time, immaculately dressed as always, her expression revealing nothing. Nathan is on his way, she informed us, setting her briefcase on the polished table. Traffic from the airport, so he had flown in from Seattle, specifically for this meeting. The knowledge gave me a small spark of satisfaction. He had recognized the seriousness of our position immediately. He arrived 7 minutes later, slightly breathless, his normally perfect appearance showing signs of hasty travel, tie slightly askew, a faint wrinkle in his shirt cuff. He nodded to me, a gesture, neither friendly nor hostile, simply acknowledging. Thank you all for meeting. Gloria began taking control of the room with practiced ease. I understand there are some concerns about disclosures made during the divorce proceedings. Elaine opened her portfolio, more than concerns. Gloria, we have documented evidence that your client failed to disclose material financial information during our negotiations, specifically his knowledge of his impending inheritance from Richard Walsh and the bequest to Olivia. She slid copies of the relevant documents across the table. The will excerpts, the bank statements showing the establishment of trusts before our settlement, the timeline of Richard's illness that confirmed Nathan had known about his inheritance months before our divorce. Gloria reviewed them without visible reaction, though her stillness itself seemed to communicate recognition of a difficult position. Nathan beside her maintained a careful neutrality, though I noticed his jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. As you know, Elaine continued, this constitutes fraud by omission and provides grounds to vacate the divorce decree entirely. We would then renegotiate with full disclosure of all assets, including the controlling interest in Meridian Properties valued at approximately $347 million. Nathan's composure slipped for a fraction of a second. A flash of alarm quickly masked. The specific valuation figure confirmed what I had suspected he hadn't known about. My meeting with Megan hadn't realized how much information I had obtained. Gloria set the documents aside carefully. These are serious allegations that would require substantial litigation to resolve. I'm sure we all recognize that such a process would be lengthy, expensive, and uncertain for both parties. Indeed, Elaine agreed smoothly, which is why my client is prepared to offer an alternative resolution. I sat straighter, allowing Elaine to present my terms exactly as we had discussed. Immediate transfer of Richard's bequest, substantial donation to the women's shelter, and a permanent non-contact agreement. When she finished, Nathan spoke for the first time. May I have a moment alone with Olivia? Elaine looked to me, eyebrows raised in question. I hesitated, weighing the request. Part of me wanted to refuse to maintain the professional buffer between us, to deny him the intimacy of private conversation. But another part needed closure, needed to look him in the eye one final time without attorneys mediating the exchange. 5 minutes. I agreed no more. The attorney stepped outside, closing the door behind them. Nathan remained seated across the table, maintaining the physical distance between us. "You met with Megan," he said. Not a question, but a statement. "Yes." "She told you about the will about Meridian." I nodded. "Why did you hide it, Nathan?" "The settlement was already heavily in my favor due to the prenup. Why risk everything to conceal the inheritance?" He looked down at his hands, then back up. Something like resignation in his expression. Habit, maybe the instinct to protect assets, to reveal only what's necessary. The same instinct that made me a good attorney, but a terrible husband. And Richard's bequest to me, $5 million, isn't something you simply forget to mention. A flash of something embarrassment, resentment crossed his face. That was harder to explain. "My father left you that money specifically because he thought I had failed you. It felt like his final judgment on me, as a son, as a husband, so you hid it out of pride, out of shame." He corrected quietly. And yes, I recognize the irony. Concealing it only proves his point about my character. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of years together and months apart hanging between us. Despite everything, I felt a flicker of something like pity. Nathan had spent his life seeking approval from his father, from the firm's partners, from the world, always performing, always calculating, always one step removed from genuine connection. "Your terms are reasonable," he said. "Finally, I'll sign the agreement. You'll have the bequest within the week, and I'll make the donation to the shelter immediately." "Thank you." He hesitated, then added, "For what it's worth, seeing the Victorian that day watching you plan its renovation, it reminded me of who you really are. Someone who builds beautiful things, who sees potential where others see problems. I should have valued that more when I had the chance." The compliment landed strangely, both genuine and beside the point. "This isn't about what you failed to value, Nathan. It's about what you failed to honor. Truth, commitment, basic respect." He nodded, accepting the correction. "You're right, and I'm sorry. Not just for the affair or the deception about the will, but for all of it, for not being the man you thought you married." The attorneys returned then, the brief moment of personal connection closing as abruptly as it had opened. We proceeded efficiently through the details of our agreement. Gloria drafting language on her laptop, Elaine reviewing each point with meticulous attention. Within 2 hours, it was done. Nathan signed the documents without hesitation. His signature as bold and confident as it had been on our prenuptial agreement 7 years earlier. I signed my portions watching as Gloria and Elaine added their witness signatures to each page. "I believe that concludes our business," Gloria announced, saving the final document and closing her laptop. "The transfer instructions for the bequest will be sent to your office tomorrow. Elaine, the donation to the shelter will be made this afternoon." We stood, the formality of the setting, making a handshake seem appropriate. Despite everything, Nathan extended his hand first, his expression solemn. "Goodbye, Olivia." I accepted the handshake briefly. The contact, impersonal and final. "Goodbye, Nathan." He left with Gloria, not looking back, as the door closed behind them. Elaine gathered our copies of the signed documents, securing them in her portfolio. "Congratulations," she said simply. "It's really over." Now walking out of the heath, into the bright spring afternoon, I felt lighter than I had in months, perhaps lighter than I had in years. The weight of betrayal, the burden of fighting for what was rightfully mine, the shadow of Nathan's manipulations all lifted with each step away from that conference room. My phone chimed with a text as I reached my car. "Kate, well, how did it go?" I smiled, typing back clean, "Done." He agreed to everything. Her response was immediate. "Champagne tonight, my place, 7:00 p.m. non-negotiable." That evening we sat on Kate's balcony, overlooking the city glasses of Champagne. catching the last golden light of day. I had recounted the meeting, Nathan's apology, the final handshake that marked the end of 7 years together. So Kate said, refilling our glasses, "What now? What does freedom look like for Olivia Carter?" The question hung in the air, full of possibility rather than uncertainty. The Victorian, for starters. With Richard's bequest, I can do the renovation properly. No cutting corners, no compromises. Make it exactly what I've always imagined. And your business. I'm thinking of rebranding actually, not just interior design, but full restoration consulting for historic properties. The idea had been forming for weeks, crystallizing as I worked through the Victorians' renovation challenges. There's a niche there, people who want to honor the history of these grand old houses while making them livable for modern families. Kate raised her glass to Carter. Restoration Designs has a nice ring to it. I clinked my glass against hers, the name echoing pleasantly in my mind. I like that. Simple, clear, focused, just like its founder. She observed with a smile, so no regrets about not going after more in the settlement. I considered the question carefully. No, the prenup penalty, Richard's bequest. It's more than enough to build the life I want. Fighting for more would have meant staying entangled with Nathan, letting him continue to affect my choices, my peace of mind. The sun was setting now, painting Portland's skyline and shades of pink and gold somewhere across town. The Victorian waited for my vision to transform it downtown. The women's shelter would receive a donation that might change lives in Seattle. Nathan would begin his new life with new wealth and perhaps new understanding of what his choices had cost him. And here on this balcony, I was already becoming someone new, someone shaped by betrayal, but not defined by it. Someone who had fought for what was rightfully hers and then chosen to move forward rather than remain locked in battle. You know what the best part is? I said, watching the last sliver of sun disappear behind the West Hills. For the first time in my adult life, I don't have to consider anyone else's dreams or ambitions or preferences. The Victorian will be exactly what I want it to be. My business will go in whatever direction feels right to me. My future is entirely my own. Kate raised her glass one final time. To your future. Then may it be even more beautiful than you can imagine. As twilight deepened into evening city lights, twinkling to life below us, I felt something unexpected settle in my chest, not just peace or closure, but genuine excitement for what lay ahead. The end of my marriage hadn't just closed a chapter. It had opened possibilities I hadn't been able to imagine. While trying to fit my life around Nathan's, sometimes the most unexpected revelations, even those delivered by a pregnant secretary at an anniversary dinner, aren't endings at all, but doorways to something better than what came before. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.